Bichirs are fascinating fish native to the waterways of Central and Western Africa. They are ancient fish that can breathe air and have many other extremely interesting adaptations. They are also becoming increasingly popular in the pet trade due to their striking appearance. As always, check the video description for a document with the sources for the images used and useful research papers. This is the first time I'm covering a fish in the class Actinopterygii on my channel, which is surprising considering this class includes over 50% of all vertebrate species. Actinopterygii, or ray-finned fish, are named for their fins made of bony spines joined by thin webbings of skin. This contrasts with the lobe-like fins seen in the Sarcopterygians, like coelacanths and lungfish. Speaking of coelacanths, check out my video on them if you want a detailed breakdown of the phylogeny of living vertebrates, or to understand why the term fish is phylogenetically useless. The earliest divergence amongst the Actinopterygians was the subclass Cladistia, which includes the bichirs we're focusing on. We'll delve deeper into this group later. Next is the subclass Chondrostii. Originally, Chondrostii was considered paraphyletic, but the group was refined in the 1980s to resolve this classification issue. Now it only contains sturgeons, paddlefish, and their extinct relatives. These fish have secondarily lost much of their ossified bones, having skeletons made mostly of cartilage, similar to sharks and rays in the class Chondrichthyes. Despite this similarity, fish and Chondrostii are more closely related to humans than they are to sharks, and are firmly included with the other bony fish in Actinopterygii. The next subclass is Teleostii. If you think of a random fish, chances are it's a teleost. This subclass includes 96% of all living Actinopterygians and nearly 99% of all living fish. Over 26,000 species have been described, with more still being discovered. They have a wide variety of body shapes, from seahorses to salmon to flatfish to eels. Despite their diversity, they do share some common traits. Teleosts are defined by the muscles around their jaws, which allow them to protrude their mouths outward, giving them an advantage when capturing prey. They do share some further similarities, such as the roughly equal size of the lobes of their tail fin. However, due to their vast variety, pinpointing more diagnostic features can be challenging. The last subclass is Holostii, which contains bowfins and the gars. They tend to show more primitive features than the teleosts, such as thicker scales and less specialized body shapes. Unlike teleosts, their tail fin typically has a slightly longer upper lobe. Cladistia diverged from the other Actinopterygians around 330 million years ago during the Carboniferous period. There are at least 2 orders in the subclass, with a third sometimes included. Gildeichthyeiformes is a disputed order historically placed in Cladistia. However, a 2024 phylogenetic study found that they belong to a now extinct divergence that occurred after Chondrostii, but before Teleostii. This order only has 2 species, which showed an interesting mix of modern and primitive characteristics. Firmly within Cladistia is the now extinct order Scanolepiformes. These fish lived during the Triassic period, between 252 million years ago to 201 million years ago, and were known for their very long dorsal fin. They could be found throughout North America, Europe, and Asia, but went extinct during the end Triassic extinction event. The remaining order in Cladistia is the Polypteriformes, the only lineage with species still alive today. The oldest known members of this order date to the late Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. There are various extinct genera, although they do not seem particularly diverse. Many genera are Incertae sedis, meaning they have not been assigned to a family, and their relationships to other lineages are uncertain. As such, there is only one family, Polypteridae, but not all genera in this order are included within it. The family Polypteridae encompasses all living species of Polypteriformes, along with several extinct ones. Polypteridae includes the extinct genera Bewittius and Serenoichthyes, both from the late Cretaceous period of northern Africa. Some of the Incertae sedis genera were discovered in South America, indicating the order was widespread throughout Gondwanaland, the ancient supercontinent that included Africa, South America, Australia, and India before it separated into the continents we know today. As we have already explored, Polypterids are in the most basal lineage of the Actinopterygians. This is clearly seen in many of their features, which are often more similar to the tetrapods and sarcopterygians than they are to teleosts and other members of the Actinopterygii. The living species are divided into two genera. Opetoichthyes only has a single species, the reedfish. They live in the fresh and brackish water near the coast of Benin, Cameroon and Nigeria in Western Africa. The other genus is Polypterus, and this is much larger. It contains 13 species of fish, commonly known as the bichirs, although they are sometimes called dragon bichirs or dragon fins in the pet trade to try and make them more appealing. The two genera exhibit numerous differences, especially in terms of morphology and behaviour. Reedfish are long, almost eel-like, whereas the bichirs, while still long, are much more robust. Reedfish have a single, continuous dorsal fin running down its back, while the bichirs are distinctive for the multiple finlets on their back. Reedfish are nocturnal while bichirs are typically diurnal. Reedfish will come out of the water completely, slithering like a snake to explore and find food on land. Bichirs, on the other hand, do not leave the water voluntarily. Even from this quick list, it should be obvious that there are many differences between the genera, despite being closely related. Bichirs were first described to science in 1802 by French naturalist Etienne Geoffroy Saint-Hilaire. At the time, no one quite knew what they were. Debates ensued over whether bichirs were fish or amphibians, and many considered them the missing link, showing the transition from fish to land-dwelling vertebrates. The genus name Polypterus comes from Greek and means many wings. This refers to one of their most immediately noticeable features. Instead of a singular dorsal fin, bichirs possess a row of finlets along their back. The number of finlets varies from 7 to 18, and they serve several important functions. These finlets are comprised of spines made of bone, contrasting their other, much softer fins, which are made of collagen and other proteins. Their finlets help with swimming, but bichir use them in a behaviour called flaring. This is where they erect their dorsal finlets as a display to defend themselves, or show dominance or aggression. This is possibly also involved in mating and other social interactions. Bichirs have a specialised muscle at the base of each finlet, which they contract when they need to raise their finlets. It is not just their dorsal finlets that are unusual either. Bichirs can walk on land using their pectoral fins if required. As I mentioned earlier, bichirs do not leave the water of their own volition. However, if the pool they are in dries up, then they can use this locomotion to try and get to another source of water. Additionally, bichirs are able to fully regenerate their fins if one is damaged or torn off. It only takes them a month to fully regenerate a fin, including both bone and fleshy tissues. They do this using similar cellular processes that salamanders use for their incredible regenerations. The fact that this is present in bichirs as well as salamanders suggests that this might have been a primitive ability found in vertebrates, but was subsequently lost in later groups. Bichirs possess a unique respiratory system. They can breathe using their gills, but they also have lungs and so can breathe air. Their gills work the same way as any other fish. They inhale water through their mouth, which then passes over their gills where gas exchange occurs. The water is then expelled through their gill slits. As for their lungs, these are very different to those seen in other fish. Some, like tarpon, can use their swim bladder to help them extract some oxygen from the air. Lungfish, on the other hand, have true lungs that are divided into numerous small chambers, more similar to the lungs of terrestrial vertebrates. Bichirs use neither of these systems. Their lungs are unchambered and are essentially comprised of two large sacs. The right lung is larger and extends the length of their body, while the left lung is smaller, only extending to their stomach. Bichirs are the only animals to have lungs but no trachea or windpipe. Instead, they breathe air using the spiracles on top of their head, although they can also breathe using their mouth. The air then enters into their esophagus, which has slits in the side connecting it to the lungs via the glottis. Despite these adaptations, bichirs are not obligate air breathers. They can breathe using either their lungs or gills, but are not required to use either method most of the time. In well-oxygenated water, they will prefer to use their gills, but they can survive in anoxic waters by coming to the surface and using their lungs. This makes their lungs and gills important adaptations to help them survive in water that is unsuitable for most other fish. Bichirs are carnivorous, eating small fish, insects, crustaceans, and worms. The waters where they live often have low visibility, but bichirs actually have weak eyesight, so this is not a major concern for them. Instead, they hunt by using their excellent sense of smell. They have retained a sensory organ known as the accessory olfactory organ. This is absent or vestigial in most other bony fish, but greatly enhances the Bashir's sense of smell. It allows them to detect chemical cues or pheromones in the water, and possibly also helps them to draw water into their nose, which further enhances their sense of smell. Additionally, they also have external nostrils to further enhance their smelling capabilities, but this is more prominent in some species than others. These are important adaptations for Bashirs, as they often live in murky waters, making eyesight a much less reliable sense. Bashirs have many other adaptations. Their scales, for example, not only add to their primitive appearance, but provide excellent protection. The scales are a type known as ganoid, meaning that they are diamond-shaped and extremely thick. The scales of a Bashir are about 3 times as thick as the scales of most other fish, and are coated in a hard enamel-like substance known as ganoine. The genus Polypterus encompasses 13 species of Bashirs, which are categorized into 4 distinct clades or groups. Before examining the extant species, there are several known extinct members of this genus. Fossils of Polypterus sudanensis or Polypterus stegeti were found in the same formation in Niger. They lived during the Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. This makes them the earliest known Bashirs, and they provide good insight into evolutionary history of this group. Polypterus ferrea is a much more recent species, from the late Miocene, about 7 million years ago. Its fossils were discovered in Chad, and while they looked like modern Bashir, they had unique scalation and a slightly different body structure. Returning to the species still alive today, I will be focusing more on the groups, not the individual species. Many species are poorly known, or the information about each one is very similar. This structure will still be enough to give you some insight into the different species of Bashirs, however. The Retropinus group comprises a single species, the West African Bashir, Polypterus retropinus. It is found primarily in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Gabon, with a possible population further north in Cameroon. These Bashirs inhabit swamps, floodplains and small rivers, primarily within the Congo Basin. They are the most basal lineage of the living Bashirs, branching off earlier compared to the other species. West African Bashirs are more slender than other Bashirs, and can grow to around 34 centimeters or 13 inches long. Their body is typically olive green on the sides, fading to whitish or pale beige color on the underside. This coloration is broken up by distinctive dark vertical bars or spots along their body. They have 7 to 9 dorsal finlets along their back, and each one is topped by a sharp spine. As with most of their family, West African Bashirs are carnivorous. In the wild, they eat small fish and invertebrates. They are a popular fish in aquariums, and in captivity will eat mostly meat, including prawns, earthworms, and mussels. They may refuse to eat dried foods, although they can be trained to do this. However, they will readily consume most frozen or live foods. They breed during the rainy seasons, either in March to May or September to November. To show interest in breeding, the male chases and nudges the female. If she is receptive, then they will lock fins together so the female can pass her eggs to the male to fertilize. Once he has done this, they will scatter the eggs among the vegetation. Eggs hatch in only 3 to 4 days, and the young are able to swim freely 3 days later. The IUCN lists the West African Bashir as least concern, as it is widespread with no known major threats. It is caught by humans for food and for the pet trade, but these are not believed to be concerns for the survival of the species, at least at their current level of impact. The Bashir group has 4 species. The Congan Bashir, Polypterus congicus, is native to the Congo River Basin. They are the largest species of Bashir, getting up to lengths of just under 1 meter or just over 3 feet. They have a prominent lower jaw and are distinctive for the 8 irregular dark bands along their spine. The rest of their body varies in colour of yellowish brown to grey. The distribution of the Guinean Bashir, Polypterus ansaugii, is patchy, with populations in small areas in Guinea-Bissau, Guinea and Nigeria. They grow to around 72 centimeters or 28 inches long and have distinctive dark blotches on their sides. The saddled Bashir, Polypterus endlicheri, is sometimes known as the sangmiki, especially in the pet trade. These Bashirs are also large, reaching lengths of about 68 centimeters or 28 inches. They have large, dark bands on their back and a distinctive flattened head. They have a wide distribution, being found in Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso and Nigeria in the west, to the Central African Republic in the middle, to Ethiopia and Sudan in the east. The last member of this clade is the Nile bashir, Polypterus bashir. This is possibly the best studied bashir, and it was the first species described. This popularity is largely attributed to its widespread and accessible distribution. They are found along the Nile River, from the Egyptian Delta in the north all the way south to Uganda and Kenya. In addition to this, they are also found along various waterways in Senegal, Guinea, Mali, Ghana, Chad and Cameroon. As you might notice, some of these locations are very isolated from the Nile and from each other. This has led to some speciation among the Nile bashir, with 3 currently recognized subspecies. All 4 species are rated as least concern by the IUCN. The only one that could be significantly impacted by human activities is the Nile bashir, given its distribution along the Nile River. This means it could be impacted by human activities and habitat loss. There is even some suggestion that it is regionally extinct in Egypt. However, it remains widespread and common throughout its range, so it is not currently threatened. This holds true for the rest of the species in this clade, although one of the populations of the Guinean bashir is specifically noted as significantly impacted by habitat degradation due to deforestation. Next, let's explore the Weeksii group, a clade with 3 unique species. Unlike the previous 2 groups, the bashirs in this group have an upper jaw with a length that is longer than or equal to their lower jaw. The other main difference is the juvenile stage retains external gills longer than other bashirs. The members of this clade are particularly colourful, but most bashirs have at least some variation in colour with dark bands, blotches or spots. They are all found in the Congo Basin. Despite all being present in the same river system, it is very interesting to see the variations between the different species. The first species is the Mokele Mbembe bashir, Polypterus Mokele Mbembe. Let's start with the name. Mokele Mbembe is an animal cryptozoologists have been searching for since the early 1900s. It is a sauropod rumoured to live deep in the jungles and swamps of the Congo River Basin. Ironically, given the size of sauropods, the Mokele Mbembe bashir is one of the smallest, getting to around 36 centimeters or 14 inches long. To be fair, as far as sauropods go, Mokele Mbembe is also rumoured to be on the smaller size. Still, the name is more likely due to the location as opposed to the size of the fish. The Mokele Mbembe bashir is found in the Congo River Basin, only in the Congo and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Mokele Mbembe is the most recently described species of bashir. It was only named in 2006. Before that, it was considered a subspecies of the West African bashir. As you can tell from its placement in the phylogeny, genetic analysis proved that it was more closely related to literally every other living species of bashir than it was to the West African one. The next species is the one this group is named after, the mottled bashir, Polypterus weeksii. It is found throughout Central Africa, in the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo and Central African Republic. Their coloration is very distinctive, as their body is mottled, with a light grey to dark brown colour mixed with contrasting white specks. Many of them also have an extremely recognisable cross-type marking on their head. The final species in this clade is the ornate bashir, Polypterus ornatopinus. As the name suggests, this is probably the most colourful bashir. It is typically dark brown or grey, but with highly contrasting yellow patterns along its back. It is also in the Congo Basin, although it is more widespread than the other species in this clade. It is not only found in the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo and Central African Republic, but can also be found in Cameroon, Angola and Tanzania. As with the other bashirs we've looked at so far, all these species are listed as least concern by the IUCN. They are widespread with few known threats. The final clade we will discuss is the largest, with 5 species. This is the Senegalus group. They are diverse, but do share the longer upper jaw length that is also seen among the Weeksii group. The Tugalsi bashir, Polypterus tugalsi, is only found in the Cross River drainage basin in Cameroon. This limited distribution makes it more vulnerable compared to other bashir species. In fact, this is the only species that the IUCN does not rate as least concern. Instead, they list it as data deficient. The Cross River area is heavily impacted by deforestation, but they also suggest that the Tugalsi bashir could be more widespread than is currently known. More research into the Tugalsi bashir is required to understand its distribution and the impacts of deforestation. While closely related to the short-finned bashir, the Tugalsi bashir can be distinguished due to its redder coloration and longer body. That brings us to the short-finned bashir, Polypterus palmus. It is much more widespread than the Tugalsi bashir, being found along the coast of Western Africa, from Côte d'Ivoire and Liberia through Guinea and Sierra Leone to Senegal. It is typically a golden colour, although two morphs are known. The southern one has a pale yellow body with thin, dark barring, while the northern one is a deeper gold with thicker barring. The Senegal bashir, Polypterus senegalis, has a variety of other common names, such as the Otel, grey bashir, Cuvier's bashir, dinosaur eel, or dragonfish. It is widespread in Africa, from Senegal along the western coast, to Sudan, Ethiopia and Kenya in the east, and most countries in between. There is also a population much farther south, around Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as an invasive population near Yaoundé in Cameroon. It is better studied than most other bashirs, at least partly because it is the most popular species in the pet trade. It has 8 to 11 dorsal finlets, and their external nostrils are more prominent than those in most other bashirs. They can also be a variety of colours from grey to beige to even a shimmering blue. White or pinkish albinos also exist, which, while rare, are highly sought after by aquarists for their striking coloration. The barred bashir, Polypterus delhaizi, is another species with striking coloration. Their base colour is grey, but this has specks of yellow or green, along with dark bands across their back, giving them quite a beautiful appearance. They are found in the Congo Basin, specifically in the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the Central African Republic. The last species is Pole's bashir, Polypterus poli. They are also found in the Congo Basin, although the IUCN lists them as probably extant in this region. This uncertainty is due to limited data and the remote and inaccessible terrain in which these fish are found. However, there are no known threats to them, and given the status of better-known bashir species, it can be assumed that their populations are doing well. Pole's bashir used to be considered a subspecies of the short-finned bashir, but as you can see in the phylogeny, genetic analysis has proven that they are more closely related to the barred bashir, and so are now considered a separate species. That was a lot of species to cover in a relatively short video. However, before finishing, I do want to take a minute to mention the pet trade. Bashirs, though not common in pet stores, are popular among aquarists for their unique appearance and ability to breathe on both land and in water. The Senegal and ornate bashirs are probably the most common in the pet trade, but the barred, saddled and Tugalsi bashirs are also popular choices. Many species have been successfully bred in captivity, albeit with considerable effort, so captive bred specimens are becoming more available. Note that this could be disputed for some species. The Makili Mbembe bashir was first successfully bred in captivity in 2020, so most of the available individuals are still wild caught. Aside from the effect of removing them from wild populations, wild caught animals are generally less desirable as pets. They can be stressed from capture and transport, may not adapt well to captivity, and can carry parasites or diseases. Consequently, they often require more care than their captive bred counterparts and may have a shorter lifespan. This is an important consideration when getting a new pet, especially one that is exotic or uncommon. As we continue to learn more about these fascinating fish and become more familiar with the requirements to breed the other bashir species in captivity, it is hopeful that captive bred Makili Mbembe bashirs will become more available in the future, ending the demand for wild-caught specimens. I hope you found this dive into the world of bashirs interesting. They are truly unique, with their lungs, accessory olfactory organ, and multiple finlets. Unfortunately, many species are poorly researched, so little is known about them. I expect this to change in the future, especially given their rise in popularity in the pet trade, but for now there is still much left to discover about these ancient fish. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.